Hi, Kyle. It's Bruce Cockburn here.
How are you, Bruce?
I'm pretty well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's really a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks. I appreciate your interest.
Let's see. First off, I should congratulate you, actually, because the whole Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame, that's a big thing. I mean, I feel like you were a shoo-in for a long time, so maybe it's more surprising that it took this long, but congratulations.
I don't know. I thank you very much. It's a nice thing for sure. It's not something I spend very much time thinking about, honestly, but I mean, that kind of stuff is a part of the music scene that I don't pay much attention to, but it's nice to be recognized for sure, and I think we'll probably have a pretty good evening.
I'm probably painting it more than you would care for, but it's sort of like getting the crown on the career. Not that your career is even anywhere near finished, but it's a nice crown on top of it, just the same.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't mean you're supposed to be dead. That's the catch with halls of fame. It's like, aren't you supposed to be like over with by then? But anyway, it is nice, and I'm over that, so it's fine.
Yeah, well, I think the same could be said about the memoir, because it's sort of the interesting thing. You have your memoir out of the way now, yet your life still goes on. There's still more story after the end, or whatever.
Yeah, and if my hands fail me at some point, maybe I can write volume 2.
Yeah.
We'll see. We did leave it kind of open for that, because it ends, that story ends in 2010.
Yeah.
Just when I was getting ready to move out here, or had just moved out here. So actually getting ready to, because I think the book ends about the time I get back from Baghdad, which was, that's it now, even earlier, 2004.
Oh.
So anyway, I mean, this is an aside. We don't have to go there, but yeah, there'll be more story to tell at some point if I have the brain and the energy left to tell it.
Does it seem in a way, though, that kind of cleans the slate in any way, getting the story out there like that? Is there any sort of reset?
I wouldn't say it that way. I mean, I think what there was a certain satisfaction in having kind of put it all, or let's say aspects of it all, because, I mean, there's obviously a lot of stuff that happened in my life up to the point I wrote the book that isn't in the book. I mean, just because, the book would be like thousands of pages long instead of the 600 that it is. But it was satisfying to put it together in that way and have it, kind of the story of my growing spiritual understanding, I suppose, is really what it is. To have that cataloged up to date, I've always felt like, without really feeling like, I don't have an ego attachment to this idea, but it's always felt to me like part of the songwriting job for me was to leave a trail of whatever it is to grow as a human, both spiritually and in terms of intellectual understanding and all that sort of stuff. And the songs are kind of that trail. And so the book is a way of consolidating it into, something. I suppose you could say if anybody didn't get it in the songs, they'll get it in the book because it's explicit, But and somebody described the book. I think I don't know if it's one of the blurbs about it or if somebody just said it, but it's kind of a chronicle in a way of one person's experience of the second half of the 20th century. And I think in a certain sense, my experience, while it's individual to me, is representative of a lot of other people's experience too. So I think there's something to be shared there.
And that journey towards spirituality, and I know that goes into this record a lot as well, on Bone, spirituality and a bit of what's happening in the world that I call the era that we're in at the moment. It's nice not to use the name sometimes. But,
yes,
and you're here in America. You probably have realized far before this moment that a lot of times religion sort of gets lumped in with the right side, the right wing of things for politics, for whether there's a lot of reasons. But, for you, it seems like there might have to be a balance of trying to work in spirituality and politics, or is there? Do you have to try too hard on that?
I don't, actually. I think it's important to pay attention to the potential for confusion there. Really, really important. But for me, I have my emotional reaction, immediate reaction to the stuff that comes down the pipe about who said what and who's going to do what and all that in the political arena. But and I have a response to that I feel. But in the bigger picture, that my understanding of what politics is supposed to be about is really based on my spiritual understanding, and an essential part of that is that we're supposed to love with one another and treat each other with compassion. And if you start there, it changes. It's going to change your views on a lot of political stuff. People get all worked up over a confusion between religious principles and social custom, and between religious principles and their own anger that we all carry with us from whatever source. And that sometimes, is expressed in a mass way, as we can see around us now in various quarters, and certainly throughout history. I mean, this identifying religion with the state isn't a new thing, that we're identifying it with a powerful personality or identifying it with your own fear. This history's full of examples of this in all religions. And I think we have to be very wary of that kind of connection between faith and politics. But I think it's really, if you come at it from the angle of compassion and attempting to understand what motivates people, then it gives you a healthier perspective. At least it also makes you feel somewhat helpless because there's such an avalanche of the other stuff.
Right. Well, it's still beautifully said, though. And so when this happens, when anything big in politics is happening, like it is happening right now, a lot of people do turn to artists, sure, but there's also sort of an expectant, this is what's going to be in music. But I get the feeling from what I've read about you going into this record that you never tried for that.
I never have. It's always felt to me, I don't really think about it that much. It's just do the next thing. So, there are songs that were written with a considerable degree of intentionality, let's say, but I don't remember ever sitting down and saying, okay, now I got to write a song on this topic. Well, actually, I have to qualify that slightly. Once in a while, I've been invited to write a song for a particular purpose, like a film, say, and then of course you're operating with coming at it from a different angle. But normally, for me, it's just a wait for the next idea. And the next idea is likely to spring from an emotional response, a strong emotional response to something I encounter, whatever it is. And it could be anything. Yeah. So, this album is a lot about spirituality. It's a lot about being a person in this kind of what appears to be an increasingly crazy world. And so, when I say it like that, it sounds like these are big themes, capital T, that are there. But really, the songs are personal to me the same way all my songs have always been.
One of those I'll actually point out with sort of all of that in mind is 3 Al Purdys, because as I get, especially from the press release, which was very helpful, they're not always, but they were this time. There was a moment because of the time spent between the last record, writing the book, and everything in between, where you had doubted if you were going to be able to go on musically, and it was a tribute, right, to Al?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The Al Purdy was a Canadian poet. He died in, I think, 2000, and he was of my dad's generation. I think they were born the same year, 1918. And he was a brilliant poet, a brilliant Canadian poet, and really in a way, it might be a little bit of you had to be there, but if you were to read his stuff as a non-Canadian, you might not get this aspect of it, but he really radiates the soul of Canada. A lot of his poetry does anyway. It also has a kind of universal application the way stuff of the heart does, but it's very Canadian. It's very, very strong writing. And I hadn't really gotten into him very deeply. I was aware of him, but then, as you said, I was going through this period after I wrote the memoirs. I had spent 3 years writing in that and not writing anything else. So there were no new songs, and I thought, well, maybe songwriting's over. Maybe I'm supposed to write volume 2 of the book instead, or something. Start writing journalism. But the songs did start coming, and one of the triggers to that was being invited to contribute a song to a documentary film that was being made about Al Purdy. And it was, the intent behind that was to raise awareness, among the public about him and his place in the sort of Canadian literary scene. And a bunch of us were invited to contribute songs, and it just came at a perfect time for me because by saying yes to it, then I had to get down and write something. It was going to be the Kickstarter to getting back into songs if it worked, and luckily for me it did. So So I came up with this notion, thinking about Purdy's poetry and just thinking about him as a kind of character. The character in the song is not him, of course, but I just imagined this homeless guy who's obsessed with. I see a lot of homeless guys in San Francisco. They're really a lot. So, it was easy to picture. There's this guy on the street corner apparently ranting, but actually reciting Al Purdy's poetry. And so I just pictured this guy, and I thought the line came to me, "I'll give you 3 Al Purdys for a $20 bill." So that gave birth to the song, and the song gave birth to the rest of the song. So I was very happy about that.
Yeah, I'm so happy those songs came. I don't mind saying that you've really done one of your finest albums, and for number 33, that's crazy. It's a heck of a catalog you got there.
Well, I hope people appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to getting out and touring with the songs. That's the exciting thing. And it does say, 33 albums, for crying out loud. Although, I was reading in Glenn Campbell's obituary, and he made 70 albums or something.
Well, you got time still.
Well, if I last as long as he did, I've got 9 years to get the rest of them done. That would be a tall order.
Well, I look forward to all 40 some odd albums that you still got to come out. So I'll be listening.
Okay,
Bruce, it was really, really a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for this record too.
Nice to talk to you too, Kyle. All the best to you.
You too. Take care, man.
All right. Bye bye.